Hello! I have finished putting together my longest day art journaling marathon art journal. I worked on the pages of the book as single sheets, and then I used the drum leaf binding technique to bind them together into a book with a hardcover spine. The spine is in 3 pieces, so it's got a cover, front and back cover, and then the spine. And I am going to flip through it. So I grabbed just some paper to use as my pretty end sheets. And this was my page that I used during the day to mark off how many pages I was doing. I got the sticker for signing up a team, so I just stuck it in the book to keep it together. This was the first page that we did in the morning. When you do an Alzheimer's walk, which ours is in the fall, I think they usually are, they do what they call a promise garden, and so you get these pinwheel flowers that have different colors. And so I thought we would start off with flowers in the different colors that the pinwheel flowers come in. Blue is for those who have Alzheimer's. Yellow is for people who are caring for someone with Alzheimer's. Purple is for the people who have lost someone to Alzheimer's. Orange is kind of a general, I support the cause and the vision of a world without any sort of dementia. And then I don't know exactly, if this is how it works at all Alzheimer's walks, but at ours, they always have one white flower, and that is given to a child, and it represents the first survivor of Alzheimer's. So for this page, I was lettering this quote by Ossie Davis, and I drew out my lines, and then I started lettering, and then I had a whole bunch of extra lines. So I decided to do a rainbow, and I liked this page better before I started coloring in the words at the top, but once I started that, I was too late, so I kept going and turned the page. I have some neon watercolors, and somebody in the chat said that I was teasing them with those watercolors. So I went ahead and did like a whole background, just doing bricks of the colors. And then I grabbed a black Sharpie and did a super messy mandala over top. Throughout the day, we had different guest hosts who just kind of came on, and some did some demos, some were there just there, kind of leading conversation. In the morning, Janessa Durrani joined us, and she was doing this page where she had used her Crayola her Crayola markers to make hearts, and hers were all a single color, but I went ahead and grabbed my whole rainbow, and these are actually my Mungyo oil pastels that are water soluble. So it's a little bit of a mess, and oh hello, we have a gate crusher here. Hi Sammy, that is not helpful. Yes, not helpful. I decided to get out the acrylic paints, and I kind of made a messy background. I can't remember the exact order some of these went in, so I don't remember if this is the one where I actually painted or if this was scraped paint left over, but I went ahead and drew a face with my brush pen and did some journaling kind of midday, talking about what we were doing. This is some of my Lost Girl watercolor paints. They're all handmade paints, and these are all of the sparkly ones. And so I just made random circles and then used my Stabilo All pencil to do the flowers, and then I spritzed it with water and carefully set it to the side so that I didn't make it streaky and move the water around, which is one of the nice things about having worked on the pages individually. So you can see with the drum leaf binding, you just have a fold down the middle of the page. You don't have any thread or that nasty gutter you get sometimes in your signatures, because the pages are just glued, or in fact I used my Tombow tape runner to put the pages together. So at some point during the day, the UPS man came and brought me some brush pens that I had ordered, and I had gotten a Zig Cartoonist white brush pen, and I was gonna grab it, but I don't see it. It's a little bit of a mess here on my table at the moment, but anyway, it's not really meant for brush lettering like this. but I made it work. And so I just, Mary Oliver is like my go-to for when I need words and I don't know what to say. As you can see, here's another Mary Oliver. This is the first part of her poem, Don't Hesitate. And now that I'm looking at it, this is actually the page that was the original acrylics page. And then I had, of course, way too much paint. So I scraped that onto some of the other pages to use as backgrounds. And I think that's just my giant Sharpie that I used for the black lettering. And I had layered, I think that was like my Stabilo Woodies and maybe some other water-soluble crayon in the background, and then I layered the blues on top. And then this is the very last line of that Don't Hesitate poem. Joy is not meant to be a crumb. And I had done just watercolor circles, kind of a color meditation that I learned from Lisa Solomon. And then I cut the letters out of just black paper. And this was another page where I had the acrylic paints out. So that's where some of the scrape paint came from. This was from, these squared off flowers are really super fun to do. And that's from a class by Alyssa Burke. And it's her one of her flower classes. I can't think, it was like 30 days. And so I actually started with a black Sharpie making the shapes. I added the paint, and at the very end I went back over the black lines of the flowers to make them stand back out. So that one's kind of fun. This is some swatch dolls based on the work of James Burke. My sister and I are kind of together, but long distance, taking a class that he calls Daisy Style. And so the Daisy Style has certain parameters where she always has her great big glasses. She always has scallops in her hair and on her clothing. The little capelet is part of it. Oh, and I just remembered that Daisy is supposed to have freckles, and I didn't put freckles on any of them. But you switch up the eyes and the noses and the mouths, and you do different things with the body shape, and it's just a lot of fun. And so I was using that as a way, and that's what James uses them for, is what he calls swatch dolls, where instead of just swatching out your paint with blobs, you draw something kind of fun, and then you swatch out your paint, like on their dress, or you could use, like their hair, you could, or mix the colors or whatever. So I just was playing with kind of doing a rainbow there. This was some more of my mixed paint, and I had this vision of these rectangles, but I wasn't sure what to put in the rectangles. And then at some point in the day, as I got more and more tired, I suddenly had a flash of doing faces, but big in those rectangles, and it was kind of fun to do. I think this is the only one where I completely lost track of what the proportions ought to be like. I mean, obviously these aren't real human proportions; they're stylized, but this one just didn't. This one didn't quite work, but I do like the rest of them. And I used that white. Well, so the other thing I got from UPS was a Kuretake brush pen. It's the number 24 with the yellow sticker. So I used that quite a bit in this book, actually. And then I used that new white brush pen for their catch lights and the highlights. This was one of the scraped paint backgrounds, and kind of a classic Lisa Congdon sketchbook exercise that I learned a long time ago. So just filling the space up with the same shape over and over. Kind of mindless, which is kind of what I needed as the day went on. So this is actually not something I did during the day. This was something I worked on yesterday. It was just kind of representing my day, and I do want to do some more with filling in. I don't know that I'm going to put any more objects in, but I thought maybe I would do some pattern work in the sky and on my desk. And obviously this is just a representation because it was the solstice. I wanted to include the sun, and then I'm in my studio, which is not blue sky, but this is pretty close to the color of my desk, I guess. And my paint's over here, my water brush, or my water jar. This was kind of the last page of the day that I was working on, and I call it Doodle Chaos. I can't remember the class that I learned it from. I can't remember exactly what she called it, but you kind of start with big shapes and the colors, and then you outline them, and then you start connecting them, and then you start doodling, and then you just keep going until your whole thing is full. And so I got about halfway done maybe on Wednesday, and then I have finished it up over the last 2 days. And then the actual last thing we did Wednesday night was write a letter to our journal, and I can see that my glitter marker wasn't completely dry when I closed this page up. But I like to, I don't know, I learned this a couple years ago from a friend where she always kind of writes a letter to her journal, kind of just thanking it, talking about what she liked about working in it, what she didn't like, what she learned, and what she wants to take, what we want to take forward to other projects and so forth. And I did use, I have some inexpensive glitter markers from Target that I used, and that was a lot of fun. And then I had to finish up with my brush marker, and then just back to the end papers. And I'm kind of being a little bit squirrely. This book isn't completely dry, but it's kind of an interesting book construction too. So you can see that the book block is actually loose. You know, it's not attached at the spine, and you leave part of the end papers unglued there so that it pops open and lays nice and flat. But that is my book. Thanks for watching.